Are you ready, kids?
Oh, I've been ready for this since 2003, but thanks for asking. In the early 2000s, SpongeBob was all the rage. Beyond the TV show, the show got its first theatrical film, merchandise, and of course, video games. Battle for Bikini Bottom was always, universally, considered to be the best in the Sponge's video game career. In the 20 years since, the quality of the games started going all over the place. Titles such as Creature from the Krusty Krab, Truther Square, and Lights Camera Pants became fan favorites. Meanwhile, Plankton's Robotic Revenge and Hero Pants were the final nails in the coffin for SpongeBob's video game legacy, until THQ Nordic regained the rights for various Nickelodeon IPs in 2018 with the sole purpose of bringing these older games to newer consoles. Then, boom! In June 2019, BFBB Rehydrated was announced and eventually released in June 2020. And while the final product does have some minor issues, it was still an amazing remake. Except for the multiplayer, which still kinda sucks and adds so much extra salt to the wound that this is where all the promised cut content was featured. But looking past that, the game sold over 2 million copies within a year, and it was obviously enough to warrant a sequel. Introducing the Cosmic Shake, SpongeBob's first foray into the multiverse, following the trend of placing your favorite characters into a multiverse of madness to see what happens. And with Purple Lamp Studios returning to the helm once again, after developing and gaining the necessary experience from Rehydrated, we're in for a real treat. And thanks to the amazing folks over at THQ Nordic, I was provided with an early review copy for the PS4, Switch, and Steam versions of the game, which included the DLC costume pack. You guys are awesome and I greatly appreciate it. So before we get started, I need to point a few things out. 1. Even though I played the game early and platinumed it, a lot of what I'm talking about is based on the PS4 version after the Day 1 patch. 2. Just in case you're worried about endgame spoilers, don't. There'll be a spoiler section at the end of the video. And 3. The footage you're seeing is a mixture of PS4, Switch, and PC footage. So without further ado, let's Cosmic Shake things up. First of all, I think it's important to understand that this is a spiritual successor to BFBB Rehydrated. What that means is that this is an evolution, but also being respectful to what was established in BFBB. It's a story-driven, 3D collectathon platformer with huge linear levels with open areas sprinkled in between that does a better job at immersing you into the world of SpongeBob than other games in the series have ever done. It's fast, it's funny, and can get pretty chaotic at times, in turn creating a much more fine-tuned and fluid experience than Rehydrated. And now I think Cosmic Shake is fast approaching my new favorite SpongeBob game of all time. Which feels weird to say cause we just got Sonic Frontiers no more than 3 months ago, and it's like the best 3D Sonic game ever. What timeline are we in again? It starts off as a normal day in Bikini Bottom as SpongeBob's preparing to head off to Glove World with Patrick, and right away, the game's presentation is already the best looking SpongeBob game to date, with how good the cutscenes, environments, character models, expressions, and dialogue animations having mostly proper lip syncing, and it gets even better the further you get into the game. From here, you're given complete control of SpongeBob to explore Bikini Bottom at your own leisure, listening to the inhabitants talking amongst themselves, and talking to pretty much anyone you want. It's SpongeBob 101, and it goes a long ways to make sure every world feels chock full of life, to the point where almost everything is breakable, and it's so fun, chucking these tumbleweeds and other objects as far as possible. Pretty sure 90% of my footage was just me whacking things and pretty much nothing else. Right off the bat though, the game is super smooth to control no matter the context. Even in combat situations, I never expected a SpongeBob game to be this good with it. and I'll come back to this. But instead of finding Patrick like a normal person, the very first thing I did is I went as far as possible before hitting an invisible wall. Don't question my actions, okay? This whole section starts a little slow, and I was here just taking my sweet old time exploring, cause that's what I do in every platformer, but it serves as the game's tutorial area to help you get a feel for the game before quickly throwing you into things soon after. And the first obstacle you face are sections of a traffic jam that may or may not have been caused by Mr. Krabs. I know that stingy crab has done some pretty sketchy things before, so I wouldn't be surprised. Also, in case anybody's been living under a rock this whole time, Clancy Brown returns to voice Mr. Krabs.
Hey, you know I meant the Krusty Krab. Nobody goes to the chum bucket unless it's asked for directions away from it.
Anyway,
after helping Sandy clear out some tikis behind her house, which are actually a bit bigger than rehydrated, and I'm kinda upset that they're static in comparison, meaning they lack any sort of movements aside from rotating that give them an extra layer of personality. Doing this task unlocks SpongeBob's standard attack, which aids in platforming via jump stalling, and makes up for the lack of a jump shadow indicator. Other combat and traversal abilities are gained throughout the game in similar ways. Others are just automatically gained from progression, rather than finishing bosses. It doesn't feel as rewarding as BFBB, but it does fit the more story-focused structure of the game. Speaking of which,
It's high tide time!
to find Patrick and really get the story started. Arriving in Glove World, SpongeBob and Patrick meet Madame Cassandra after her wagon appeared out of nowhere when asking if they can have a vial of magic bubble soap. Keep Cassandra's first reaction in mind, it'll be on the test. Madame Cassandra is the mysterious new character created for this game, and she's an all-around great character that was handled very well, and I hope we'll get to see her pop up in the cartoon at some point, especially after seeing Prawn appear in an episode after so long. Returning to Bikini Bottom, the two overdo it with the wishes for everyone in town before reading the warning on the bottle, only for it to be too late and an eruption of cosmic chaos unfolds, sending multiple buildings and almost everyone in town into different WishWorlds, flooding the first section of Bikini Bottom, leaving debris from these other worlds laying around, and transforming Patrick into a balloon that follows you around, providing some hints, extra health, and some pretty funny banter between him and SpongeBob, both in and out of cutscenes, without being restricted to certain spots like BFBB. The only exception is Prehistoric Kelp Forest, where everyone talks in caveman speak. It's a cool level, sure, and the music's also pretty good. It's just, this aspect does not make it as interesting as the other levels. What worked in the Prehistoric Special doesn't work so well here given the length of the level. After learning how to glide and we save Plankton and Karen, who are surrounded by these new jelly creatures. Why Karen just stood there and did nothing when we have this episode as context is beyond me. I need plot consistency in my SpongeBob games, dang it. Up until the game's launch, I was kinda worried that I wouldn't like the jelly enemies as much, and instead prefer BFBB's robots due to nostalgia and personal bias. While that is the case, I did enjoy the jelly enemies more than I thought I was going to, despite there being a few less enemy types than BFBB, mainly due to how much variety they bring to the combat, and how much you gotta pay attention to get the upper hand with the abilities at your disposal. For instance, in the same encounter, it's possible to trap an enemy in a bubble, karate kick then slam a second enemy, dodge another, and even reflect certain projectiles. All the while, you've got multiple enemy types at different elevations and distances for vertical combat coming at you all at once. chain together some Thunder Tikis with relatively large blast radiuses, some traversal abilities, and being able to trick them into hitting each other.
This is just too perfect.
Now I can already hear everyone screaming about the heavy jellies, cause you have to wait for an opening to hit them, which takes a pretty long time. Believe me, I had the same complaint, but I've since realized that there's a secret to making these guys super easy. To do that, just line up an enemy behind them and perform a karate kick so it hits the heavies instead, leaving them open for attack. This is the easiest method and can be spammed for as long as there's other enemies around. So yeah, Cosmic Shake's combat is really satisfying. I know some people are going to take issue with that statement, or me even liking the game, but hey, maybe I'm just super easy to please. Okay, maybe not that easy. The bosses are really good too, which really put all the skills you learn in each world to the test, and are some of the best parts of the game. Not spoiling the final boss, some of these can be a bit simplistic, sure, but given the context of these bosses, who are mostly SpongeBob's friends, they didn't need to be anything grand that would outshine BFBB's main bosses, and that's perfectly fine. Although calling Prawn, Mr. Krabs, and Twitchy the Witch proper bosses might be underselling things, as one's an arena of sorts, the other's a pretty cool train chase, and a combat-infused cake-serving sequence. That is a sentence I never thought I would say, but they're all still pretty good. Anyways, we find Cassandra again, and from here, we get access to cosmic costumes. SpongeBob games are no stranger to having costumes, whether as purely unlockable cosmetics or having actual gameplay functions. Cosmic Shake is more so the former, almost on the same level as the skin functionality in Crash 4. However, unlike Crash 4, once costumes are unlocked, you can switch back and forth between them as much as you want, when you want, and you get a pretty sweet animation on top of each costume having a dedicated reskin of SpongeBob's Bubble Wand. If you got the DLC pack, you also get Robobob's Steel Pants, which is the only costume in the game to have a unique walking, floating animation. Man, I love the attention to detail in this game. Something I do just for fun is, I try to switch costumes between every conversation just to confuse the heck out of NPCs. Okay, that doesn't actually happen, but inside, you know they're baffled. However, the confusion racks up even more in the pre-rendered-ish cutscenes, cause only the campaign costumes appear during those. Therefore, it's impossible to make these cutscenes look as goofy as possible, something Crash 4 embraced. How these costumes are unlocked is thanks to the game's new primary collectibles, gold doubloons, and cosmic jelly, neither of which block progression like the golden spatulas did in BFBB, making for a more streamlined experience. Much like how Crash 4 ditched the concept of crystals for progression. The gold doubloons are found by completing challenges, side quests, or simply searching every corner of a level, sometimes requiring you to come back later with a new ability. BFBB only did this about 3 times in the entire game for 2 levels, so I'm glad to see it in full force here. The only downside though is you cannot warp to the exact spot where they are. Instead, you'll have to trek through a good chunk of a level to find them, but thankfully these areas start glowing when they're unlocked to make things a bit easier, and sometimes they'll lead to new missions. After collecting so many doubloons, you'll unlock another tier of costumes, and then your coin counter resets to 0, so you can start earning towards the next tier. Once a tier is unlocked, you can use the cosmic jelly, which replaces the shiny objects from BFBB, to purchase these costumes from the pause menu. However, by unlocking every costume tier, you'll still have 20 doubloons to find, but they don't do anything! so I have a feeling more costumes might be added later on down the road, so we'll see how it all goes. Upon getting your first campaign costume, you gain access to the first Wish World, Western Jellyfish Fields. This one takes inspiration from the Pest of the West special, as do some of the other Wish Worlds with their respective specials. And I feel this game is taking a page out of Truth or Square's book for this, but instead of directly copy and pasting story beats, elements, and alternate characters from those specials into the game, Purple Lamp went and made entirely new ones, while throwing in some randos like the sea bears in Prehistoric Kelp Forest. I, for one, appreciate this. Not to mention, these levels just look beautiful by SpongeBob standards. After accessing the first portal, the goal of the game is to go into a Wish World, collect anything that shines, rescue SpongeBob's friends, and bring back Bikini Bottom's missing buildings. Every time you complete a Wish World's boss, you come one step closer to restoring Bikini Bottom to its former glory, and open up new areas to explore. I love this concept of restoring the environment whenever it's used in something like Sonic Generations or Spyro: A Hero's Tale, but in SpongeBob's case, the concept somehow feels fresh and adds even more life to the world as you're helping the community we've come to know for over 20 years. With characters talking about how things improved or changed the further you get into the game, or being put into various scenarios every time you return from a Wish World, with each of the main cast either needing help in the hub world to progress the story, followed by unlockable side quests that encourages further exploration of the Wish Worlds and or the hub world. Things are actually happening, as indicated by the amount of new stuff that keeps popping up in the hub world. There's even a point where you help Plankton put the chum bucket back in place after it was tipped over from the cosmic chaos. And then there's a whole subplot about the chum bucket being the only restaurant in town. It's really good stuff. Then, he tells you his pet Spot is missing, and that his trails lead to every portal, where you have to find him in each and bring him back to Plankton. And taking the size and depth of these Wish Worlds into consideration, which are more connected and less segmented than BFBB's, it can take a while before you find him, or really, any of the game's other side quest collectibles, despite having a bubble that can be seen from a pretty good distance away. This includes golden spatulas, which have been relegated to secret items hidden around every level for trophy purposes. Speaking of which, the game has a pretty handy way of keeping track of the progress you make for each trophy. Man, and we didn't even get to talk about the gameplay variety yet. Compared to BFBB, there's a surprising amount of things you can do here, and all of them are pretty enjoyable. Riding seahorses to catch a train, rolling rocks down lava streams at high speed, navigating mazes, trick-or-treating, using Snail Bob in a snail race, okay, that one was more confusing than interesting, cause how is it a race if nobody else is moving in the same direction? I don't understand. But if you told me Cosmic Shake was going to include stealth and scaring mechanics over a year ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you, because this is the most Sly Cooper thing I've seen a platformer do in a very long time, so yeah, I like this a whole lot. There's also a handful of mini-games that surprised me, purely cause of a novelty they bring to the table, despite how simple they can be at times. However, there's one pretty early into the game that I must talk about, and it's one I don't even feel comfortable showing. Some of you might have already heard about this, but it's a paparazzi minigame in the Karate Downtown level. The problem with it is, the only way to win is to spam the respective button as fast as possible. At first, that doesn't sound like a problem, until you find out that every time you press the button it creates a flash from the cameras, and you gotta do this 5 times to finish the objective. which is very concerning for anyone who might be sensitive to such amounts of flashing, and it reached a point where I had to look away while spamming the X button. I mean, the game already has color blindness settings, and as someone who has a form of color blindness, I really appreciate the feature. So, if they could implement a setting to turn off, or at least reduce the amount of flashing for this minigame, that would be so cool. Moving on from that, and regardless of what your opinions on modern SpongeBob are, whether it's the change in animation style or humor, for me, it's the over-exaggerated expressions that threw me off anything past the second movie. Cosmic Shake feels like a breath of fresh air that brings me back to the era of SpongeBob I grew up with between 2001 and 2010. Part of that is due to the excellent writing that never fails to make me laugh, which we have one of the show's current lead writers to thank for. And what we got is a story that appeals to every type of SpongeBob fan, with loads of fan service to boot, including elements from the show, such as background music, the gross-ups, which I had no idea they even had a name for after 20 plus years, the time cards being the loading screens. That's actually pretty funny, cause sometimes it does feel like an eternity, even though it takes about 20 seconds between worlds on PS4. And of course, references galore. For longtime fans, they'll appreciate all the callbacks from the earlier seasons, including the iconic Shanghai episode, as you help the Flying Dutchman reclaim his ship in Pirate Goo Lagoon. I gotta tell ya, the first time hearing that recreation of the three of them howling together to set the seven seas ablaze with fear, it honestly brought some tears of joy. I loved all the dialogue in this game, and there are loads of references like this throughout. Some of them are more subtle than others and are tied into various costumes, Easter eggs, and jokes.
What squirt of an actor did those?
Wow, everyone's out here doing censorship humor and I'm here for it. What a load of bull. For fans of the newer seasons, characters like Spot make full appearances, which I wasn't expecting given I thought he was just a one-off character before playing the game, but clearly I was wrong because he appeared in a handful of episodes since. I still ain't forgot what this nurse did to Mr. Krabs, so this is rightfully deserved. Ha, you've been Speckledorfed. There's representation for the first SpongeBob movie, and so did Battle for Bikini Bottom for all you SpongeBob video game aficionados. Makes sense cause, like I mentioned at the start of the video, Purple Lamp led development on the rehydrated remake, and the amount of BFBB stuff they put in this game, on top of building off what that game established, as well as bringing back BFBB's composers, who knocked the sponge out of water with every single track. So Cosmic Shake feels like a tribute to BFBB and the lasting impression Heavy Iron left on the gaming industry when it came to licensed games, and that is so cool to see. BFBB walked so Cosmic Shake could run, I tell you. Okay, I know I've been going a bit crazy and giving Cosmic Shake almost constant praise since the start of the video, but as with any game in existence, it's got a few problems in addition to some of the ones I mentioned earlier. These are already planned to be fixed, so chances are by the time this video releases, or shortly afterward, some of them would have hopefully already been taken care of. Tikis will sometimes flow when they aren't supposed to, so you miss out on the slight bouncing animation when they fall. Thunder Tikis affect the shadows in multiple levels. Sometimes it's not so noticeable, but other times it is very noticeable. Sometimes the game will occasionally come to a complete stop for a few seconds before resuming play, most notably when exiting a hiding bush in Halloween Rock Bottom. I've encountered a few sections where the frame rate took a massive beating. The graveyard in Western Jellyfish Fields was one of them. audio can be a bit of an issue in the PS4 version, ranging from cutscene audio going out of sync, level music stopping or glitching, something that wasn't present in the Switch or PC versions, at least from what I've played. The first cutscene with Plankton is blurry on PS4, and apparently somebody snuck in some invisible spray on SpongeBob in the final medieval cutscene. There's also no real incentive to 100% the game, other than simply helping out SpongeBob's friends and getting the remaining costumes. Cause there's no bonus cutscene like Rehydrated or the movie game had, no concept art gallery, nothing like that. But hey, at the end of the day, it's more about the journey than the destination, I guess. The last one concerns the endgame, so if you want to avoid spoilers, skip to the timestamp on screen.
47 seconds later.
To no one's surprise, Cassandra turns out to be the villain and uses the cosmic jelly we've been collecting to make herself pretty powerful, and also turns Squidward into a giant jelly monster. Don't get me wrong, this boss was pretty good. Even the atmosphere kinda reminded me of Ratchet and Clank. And the soundtrack, oh, they did not need to go this hard, but I'm glad they did. I just wish I could have actually heard it mid-fight. Thanks, Glitch. However, given the context of this boss, and compared to the final bosses of both BFBB and the movie game, this one felt a bit too easy in comparison. I get what they're going for in giving us a proper Squidward boss, and also to make up for Robo Squidward being shoved into a not-so-good multiplayer mode for Rehydrated instead of how it was originally intended. It's just somehow easier than Cosmic Shake's other bosses. Heck, Glovey Glove was harder. And I'm not joking when I say this, but I somehow managed to beat this boss in about 3.5 minutes on the first try without losing, and still got the trophy attached to it on both playthroughs. This one definitely needs to be a bit harder, and it honestly left me expecting a second phase where the health bar filled back up with Sweet Victory kicking in, almost in the vein of the SpongeBob movie game with Goofy Goober Rock. Sadly, that is not the case, so instead, Sweet Victory played during the credits. I'm glad it's in the game, don't get me wrong, it's just I was kinda let down that this is where they wound up putting it after hyping it up so much. I will say though, the reef blower in a SpongeBob game is actually really fun to use for once. But that could also be due to it reminding me of Ratchet and Clank Suck Cannon, and that is a-okay in my book. Also, when you get to Glove World, I imagine you'll be very confused the whole way through, because I know I was, and dang it, I wanted some answers.
Better sent you isolated in the park with your cosmic shake.
Oh, he said it. He said the thing.
One loading screen later.
So with that said, SpongeBob Cosmic Shake is a fantastic game that's filled to the brim with nostalgia, and definitely deserves a spot in the top 5 best SpongeBob games, alongside BFBB, the movie game, and Creature from the Krusty Krab. According to Metacritic, as I'm recording this video, that's where it currently stands. But regardless of what type of SpongeBob fan you are, or if you were hesitant about it after the state of Rehydrated, which I honestly have a hard time going back to now, and if you're a fan of PS2 era platformers, you won't be disappointed here. Don't believe me? Let's ask someone who's played far more SpongeBob games than I have.
SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake is the culmination of every single great thing about a SpongeBob video game in the past 20 years, all wrapped together in this amazingly slick and clean package, filled with love, compassion, and understanding. I mean, you name it. SpongeBob Cosmic Shake is just such a fun time. It's not the most innovative platformer in the world, but it is a great SpongeBob adventure, and that is the true appeal of this game. And so, if you are at all a fan of SpongeBob SquarePants, which chances are you are because he's basically taken over the world at this point, this is the game for you.
So with how good Cosmic Shake turned out to be, and with more patches on the way, I have full confidence in Purple Lamp's abilities for the next SpongeBob project whenever it happens. But right now, Cosmic Shake is available on PS4, Xbox One, PS5, and the Xbox Series via backwards compatibility, Nintendo Switch, and PC. If you didn't pre-order the game, the Costume Pack DLC is available separately on the respective consoles' digital storefronts. As always, what did you guys think about the game? Do you think it was better than Rehydrated, and what version did you pick up? Be sure to leave everything down in the comments section below. Also be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for more SpongeBob and Nickelodeon game content soon. Once again, and if you stuck through the whole video, thank you guys so much for watching, as this couldn't have been possible without ya. So yeah, I've been BlueKnight, and I'll see you guys back here next time.